Being unstoppable in the UFC is a very rare thing to happen. However, in recent years, we have seen a glimpse of unstoppable forces in the UFC who have achieved a certain level in their career where certain fighters have looked unbeatable for a brief moment. So here is 10 unstoppable forces in the UFC. Number 10. Back in 2013, Jackson Winkeljohn Browne was part of Jackson Wink Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was known for his exceptional footwork and his unpredictable fighting style inside the octagon. Jackson Winkeljohn Browne faced Gabriel Gonzaga at the Ultimate Fighter 17 finale, where in the fight, Gabriel Gonzaga went for a takedown attempt, in which Jackson Winkeljohn Browne was able to stuff it. He charged up his vicious elbows and landed it repeatedly on the side of Gabriel Gonzaga's head, knocking him out cold in the first round. He next faced Alistair Overeem at UFC Final 26, where in the fight, he withstood Alistair Overeem's assault, where in an instant, he landed a brutal front kick to the face of Alistair Overeem, stunning him, in which he followed up with some punches to get the TKO victory. Jackson Winkeljohn Browne next faced Josh Barnett at UFC 168, where in the fight, Josh Barnett went for a takedown attempt, in which Jackson Winkeljohn Browne was able to stuff it. He charged up his vicious elbows once again and landed it repeatedly on the side of Josh Barnett's head, knocking him out cold in the first round. Jackson Winkeljohn Browne began to look like an unstoppable force in the heavyweight division, where he was just finishing fighters with ease. But once he moved out of Jackson Winkeljohn Academy and went to Glendale Fight Club, Jackson Winkeljohn Browne was no more. His unpredictable fighting style just disappeared and became a very laid-back, hesitant fighter inside the octagon. Since then, he has just been beaten down by heavyweights in a very violent fashion. He is 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and it looks like we will never see Jackson Winkeljohn Browne fight ever again inside the octagon. Number 9. When Chad Mendes lost to Jose Aldo by knockout in the first round at UFC 142, he re-evaluated his game, enhancing both his striking and his wrestling, where he discovered his true potential. He re-emerged as a newborn fighter and was now known as Full Camp Mendes. Full Camp Mendes made his return to action, flattening Cody McKenzie with a body punch in just 31 seconds of the first round at UFC 148. He next went on to defeat Yeltsin Metza, Darren Elkins, Clay Guida and Nick Lentz in a one-sided beatdown, unleashing the beast within him. Full Camp Mendes was making a lot of noise in the 145-pound division, where he was just a terrifying force inside the octagon. He was next given the opportunity to face Jose Aldo again in a rematch at UFC 179, where in the fight, Full Camp Mendes showed new heights in all areas of the fight, giving Jose Aldo a tough time inside the octagon. After a very close fight, the unanimous decision was given to Jose Aldo, who successfully retained his title. Full Camp Mendes made his return to the octagon against Ricardo Lamas at UFC Final 63, where he just overwhelmed Ricardo Lamas with his monstrous power, finishing him by TKO in the first round. After Jose Aldo pulled out of his fight against Conor McGregor at UFC 189, Full Camp Mendes was given the call to step in on 2 weeks' notice and face Conor McGregor at UFC 189 for the interim UFC featherweight title. With only 2 weeks to prepare, Full Camp Mendes wasn't able to get a full training camp, where just ordinary Chad Mendes showed up at UFC 189, where in the fight, he had great success in taking Conor McGregor down, but his cardio was affected severely. His monstrous power was no more and was getting picked apart on the feet by Conor McGregor, in which he lost the fight by TKO in the second round. Full Camp Mendes is one of the most intimidating forces in the UFC when he has a full camp, and hopefully we get to see Full Camp Mendes in action very soon in the future. Number 8. Michael Bisping has had many ups and downs in his UFC career, where he had come so close to challenging for the title, but would always come up short. When the UFC held a card in his home country of England, hometown Bisping would show up, where he would just show a whole new version of himself, where all of his abilities were taken to a whole new level, where he would always earn the victory. This was shown when he fought Anderson Silva at UFC Final 84, where at the end of the third round, Anderson Silva landed a brutal knee, knocking Michael Bisping down. Michael Bisping was able to recover and won the fight by a unanimous decision. This victory would lead hometown Bisping to step in on short notice for injured Chris Weidman at UFC 199 and face Luke Rockhold in the main event for the UFC middleweight title, where in the fight, he knocked Luke Rockhold out in the first round to become the new UFC middleweight champion of the world. Number 7. WEC Aldo burst into the WEC in 2008, where he went on a rampage, knocking everyone senseless with his Muay Thai. He possessed great speed, where he was able to take his opponent out very quickly, which had shocked everyone. WEC Aldo defeated Mike Browne by TKO in the second round at WEC 44 to become the WEC featherweight champion of the world. He would next successfully defend his title against Uriah Faber, absolutely kicking the crap out of his legs to win the fight by a unanimous decision, and defeated Manvel Gamborian by knockout in the second round at WEC 51. When the WEC merged with the UFC, WEC Aldo had made major changes to his fighting style, where he was not the aggressive fighter he once was, where he became known as Jose Aldo, where he was just doing enough to win the fight. He did go on to defend his title 7 times, but WEC Aldo was one of the most feared featherweights on the planet, and hopefully we get to see WEC Aldo in action in the future. Number 6. Anti-Wrestler Rumble was one of the most intimidating forces in the UFC light heavyweight division. He possessed nuclear bombs in both hands, where if he landed clean on his opponent's chin, his opponent's brain will have no choice but to shut down due to the body unable to withstand the damage. Anti-Wrestler Rumble was one of the hardest hitters in the UFC, who had made easy work of top UFC light heavyweights such as Alexander Gustafsson, Ryan Bader, Jimmy Manuwa, and Glover Teixeira. Anti-Wrestler Rumble had one thing in mind, which was going into his fight and doing everything in his power to rip his opponent's head off. He always came full force towards his opponents, where he gave him no chance to get comfortable. When Anti-Wrestler Rumble faced Daniel Cormier for the second time at UFC 210, Anti-Wrestler Rumble lost control and became Wrestler Rumble, where he tried wrestling an Olympian, which led to his downfall, where he was submitted by a rear naked choke in the second round. In his post-fight interview, he announced his retirement from the sport at the age of 33. Anti-Wrestler Rumble was one of the most terrifying forces to have ever stepped foot inside the octagon, and hopefully we can see Anti-Wrestler Rumble back in action in the future. Number 5. Whilst outside of the UFC, Overeem was regarded as one of the best heavyweights who had never fought in the UFC. He was known for his high finishing rate and his violent striking abilities. Overeem possessed lethal power in every limb, where he had the ability to end the fight in an instant. When Overeem made his UFC debut against Brock Lesnar at UFC 141, he quickly made it known that he was the superior fighter, where he threw a solid body kick, instantly sending Brock Lesnar to the canvas, where he followed up with punches to win the fight by TKO in the first round. After having such a dominant performance, he was next given the opportunity to face then UFC heavyweight champion Junior Dos Santos at UFC 146. Leading up to the fight, he failed his pre-fight drug test for elevated testosterone levels and was suspended for 9 months, losing his title shot. When he returned as regular Overeem, where he suffered a string of knockout losses to Antonio Silva, Travis Browne, and Ben Rothwell. Overeem was long gone and was never seen again. Regular Overeem moved to Jackson Wink in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he made massive changes to his fighting style. He became more patient with his striking and developed great footwork to help him time his punches. With his new fighting style, he was able to put together 4 solid wins and even earned himself a title shot. Although he made a successful comeback, it seems as though regular Overeem has found what works for him. But Overeem was truly something you would find in a video game, as he was just an overwhelming force in the heavyweight division. Number 4. Jon Jones became the youngest UFC champion at the age of 23 when he defeated Mauricio Shogun Rua by TKO in the 3rd round at UFC 128. Next went on, defeating all of the top competition in the 205-pound division, racking up 7 title defenses, where the talks of him being the greatest fighter of all time slowly started to happen. His next title defense was set to be against undefeated Daniel Cormier at UFC 182. Both fighters ended up having a brawl in the press conference, which fueled up the hype for the fight. Many things were said, but the reality was that they would meet inside the octagon and find out who the better fighter was. At UFC 182, Coke Jones showed up, ready to make DC eat his own words. In the fight, Coke Jones used his reach to completely shut down Daniel Cormier in both the stand-up and the grappling exchanges. He was one step ahead of Daniel Cormier, where the unanimous decision victory was given to Coke Jones. Coke Jones had shown a massive increase in all of his overall abilities, where he completely mopped the floor with Daniel Cormier. After the fight, Coke Jones had tested positive for cocaine and was fined $25,000. Coke Jones looked unstoppable for a brief moment and will always be remembered for giving Daniel Cormier his first loss. Number 3. Ever since Healthy Khabib made his UFC debut in 2012, he has used his high-level Sambo and has just ran through all of his competition with ease, keeping his undefeated record of 24-0 intact. Healthy Khabib's strong grappling game has made him into a difficult challenge for all the opponents he has faced so far. His fighting style is so aggressive that has prevented him many times in participating in big fights due to many injuries. He was forced to sit on the sidelines for almost 2 years due to a number of knee injuries. When Healthy Khabib made his return, he completely mauled late replacement Daryl Hotcher, finishing him by TKO in the 2nd round at UFC on Fox 19. He then put a one-sided beating on Michael Johnson, eventually forcing him to tap from a Kimura lock at UFC 205. He was next scheduled to face Tony Ferguson for the interim UFC lightweight title at UFC 209, where on the day of the weigh-ins, Healthy Khabib fell ill whilst cutting weight and the fight was cancelled. Healthy Khabib is one of the scariest lightweights in the world when he is healthy, and I believe if he approaches fights a lot smarter, he can definitely become the UFC lightweight champion in the future. Number 2. Sea-level Cain is one of the most terrifying forces in the UFC heavyweight division today. He is known for his enormous gas tank and his ferocious beatdowns he has put on his opponents. His violent fighting style, mixed with his ability to completely maul his opponents, has led him to become the 2-time UFC heavyweight champion. Although many injuries have set him back, Sea-level Cain didn't seem to have any weaknesses, but once he faced Fabricio Verdum at UFC 188 in a title unification bout in Mexico, his biggest weakness was revealed. This weakness was altitude. Sea-level Cain was seen to fade away as the fight progressed, where he became became sluggish in his movements and his conditioning didn't help him one bit in the fight. He was easily getting tagged by Overeem, where he desperately went for a takedown in the 3rd round, in which he ended up in a guillotine choke and was forced to tap. C-level Cain is a force to be reckoned with, but once he is forced to fight outside his comfort zone, his ability to fight is affected severely. Number 1. In 2013, Vitor Belfort re-emerged from the depths of hell in his final form, known as TRT Vitor. He developed superhuman abilities in which he was able to execute wild spinning kicks and could end the fight with a single strike. All of his abilities were taken to new heights, where he looked untouchable inside the octagon. TRT Vitor made his first appearance when he knocked out Michael Bisping via a head kick in the 2nd round at UFC on FX7. He next knocked out Luke Rockhold via a spinning heel kick in the 1st round at UFC on FX8, and next knocked out Dan Henderson via a head kick in the 1st round at UFC Final 32. After 3 violent finishes, he was next in line for a title shot at then UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman. The Nevada State Athletic Commission banned the usage of testosterone replacement therapy, where TRT Vitor was no more. Both fighters eventually faced off at UFC 187, where Chris Weidman absolutely destroyed him in the 1st round. The difference in physique was huge, as he looked so small compared to when he was on TRT. His superhuman abilities are no more, and now he is currently 1-4 in his last 5 fights.